Good evening and welcome to this special presentation on NDTV, which is coming to you from one of the topmost commerce and business college in the country. We are at the SRCC. And this is, we thought, since morning you've been listening to the industry captains, the politicians, government, opposition talking about the budget, what they think about the budget. We thought we'll bring you for a master class with the Gen Z here. These students, in fact, have analyzed, gone through the budget. They are the ones, those who are, going on, and they are also going through the impact of this budget, not only on their future, but also the hidden, in fact, as they say, the God is in the details. So they are going through the details of the budget, have very intelligent, smart questions, and also their analysis. So we'll get to that. And we'll also try and understand from, in fact, our guest here about what do they make of this budget. So you just, got you out of the studio to this masterclass at the SRCC. And what is the Gen Z? The young people are thinking about the budget 2023, an important budget for the Modi government as they head into the election. Yeah, let me also introduce you at this moment, Professor Simrit Kaur, Principal, SRCC. Ma'am, welcome. We also have Mr. Akash Jindal, Economist, who is also joining us. And all of these lovely students of the SRCC. Can we have a round of applause for all of you as well, please? Thank you so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me start, ma'am, by asking you, overall, what number would you give the budget if you were checking Ms. Nirmala Sitharaman's paper today? Out of 10, how much does she get? And what are the hits and misses that you see in this budget? If you can tell us three big points of the budget and three misses that you thought should have been there.
First, as a teacher and judging Nirmala Sitharamanji, I would not do when the finer prints are not there. I have the confidence in the finance minister. So rather than giving the numbers, I would say it's an excellent budget with a grade of A+. Okay. And of course, the details are going to come a little later. Now, how do we analyze the budget and on what parameters are we grading? That is very important without reading the finer prints. Number one, we must understand the background to which this budget has come from. The past couple of years were very difficult years, not just for the Indian economy, but globally. We have all come through the COVID-19 crisis across globe's Western world, mirroring and reviving from the COVID-19. We saw the Russia-Ukraine war.
Absolutely.
And resultantly, the implications it had on the commodity prices, primarily food, fuel, and fertilizers. So under the circumstances, when we are seeing inflation going up, and then comes this budget, how do we take it forward? As an economist, I would always say we look for those projects which are sustainable. We need growth, which is not a short-term growth. It has to be a long-term growth, which is also inclusive and which is also sustainable.
Right.
And I compliment the finance minister for addressing these issues very well. On the growth front, the foremost thing which comes to the mind is what has been done to capital expenditure on infrastructure, primarily roads, railways. Most of the empirical literature is robust, stating that the multipliers are highest when you invest in infrastructure projects.
Okay.
So a big thumbs up when your capital expenditure goes up substantially. I think it's gone up by 33%, and even as a percentage of GDP, it is a very stark threshold interceptional shift.
Right.
When it comes to inclusiveness, I think the whole budget, if you see the storyline, inclusive to whom? Inclusive to the vulnerable and the marginalized sections of the population. And this is not necessarily the economically weaker sections, but also who are vulnerable, maybe because of being a gender bias, or there could be a digital divide. There are social caste systems within the country. There are rural-urban divides. How have we addressed this? If you take up the storyline in the economic budget, economic survey, which has also penetrated in the budget, there are 7 pillars. So starting from agriculture, you've made the farmer inclusive. You go to the women's sector, you've made the women inclusive. You go to the youth, startups are being inclusive. MSMEs. So I think the inclusiveness part has also been handled. Finally, what about the sustainability? Here I speak about green energy. If we have to reduce the carbon emissions globally, what do we do at the Indian level? Several steps have been taken to make this economy cleaner, greener, and bluer.
Okay, so that's the big headline, or the summing up the big picture as far as the budget is concerned. But
Yes.
Mr. Jindal, the fact is that a lot of people, and especially the young, those who are in this college, in a year or two they'll be in the job market. Has enough been done? One criticism of the government in the last few years, and of course it was multiplied because of the COVID situation, was unemployment. Generation of new employment. Whether even the private sector was able to generate that kind of employment, because we've seen the government sector, in that sense, was shrinking. Government jobs were shrinking. Has this budget addressed that issue?
Yeah. Firstly, you were asking about the marks. Now, I, Akash Jindal, give it 9.5 out of 10. According to me, it's a wonderful, fantastic, growth-oriented budget. Of course, ma'am is very right. We have to wait for the fine print. But whatever I am saying or analyzing is on the basis of the speech which I have seen on TV of Honorable Finance Minister. So fine print, of course, we all have to wait. Now, your question is very specific to unemployment. Yes, we are going through severe unemployment. December 2022, in case we see the data, unemployment figure is more than 8%. And particularly, urban unemployment is more than 10%. So unemployment is a huge issue, and you are very right. Corona has to be blamed for that. And Russia-Ukraine war, because Corona, every economy was impacted, including India, and we were trying to recover from Corona, that we had Russia-Ukraine war.
Right.
So one after another global issue came, and Russia-Ukraine war has negative impact on all leading economies. Now, to talk about economy like US, the role model economy, the biggest economy in the world, they had 2 quarters of negative GDP growth. China, in a quarter, they exhibited only 0.4% GDP growth.
Right.
UK and Germany, the 6th and 4th largest economy in the world, they are expected to grow. They are expected to demonstrate negative GDP growth in 2023. So when the entire world is impacted, some unemployment has to be there. Now, would this budget give employment? Yes. I think this budget would provide lots and lots of jobs. Because CapEx, 10 lakh crore rupees in CapEx. Capital expenditure, what does that mean? Infrastructure, roads, highways, buildings, plant, machinery. This would mean massive job generation, because this would have a multiplier impact. So I think this is a great thing. 10 lakh crore rupees of capital expenditure. All the young people sitting here, maybe they may become CAs, MBAs, or other children who may become engineers, architects. I think there would be jobs for them, not only in the coming years, but for 10 years. It's a 10-year vision document, 10-year growth document. This is a great decision to infuse that much
10-year growth and a larger vision is what the experts are telling us. But, I'm very interested in what you guys also think, because for the new generation, the Gen Z, you have lots of notes. You're making me nervous with all these notes. But anyway, what's your name? And tell me one thing. A lot of young people keep talking about cryptocurrency. It's a very buzzword, right? In this budget, Ms. Sitaraman did not once speak about cryptocurrency or anything related to that. Is that something that you were expecting? Were you hoping that she would say something?
Yeah. Hello, sir. Hello, sir. My name is Tejas, and being a crypto enthusiast, we were expecting that the crypto tax rate will be decreased, as well as the TDS. We were expecting that at present it is 1%. But if we are keeping TDS for the sake of tracing the transaction, we can reduce the TDS to 0.001% as well. So it was expected. And about the regulation front, I believe that more constructive policies were expected on the regulation front of the crypto market.
Okay, so some disappointment there as far as the crypto enthusiasts. A lot of questions. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, so I think everyone would agree that overall this budget did consider a lot of issues that were expected, and it is a very well formulated budget. But something I personally found missing was, if I speak of the fintech industry, a lot of the industry leaders in that sense were expecting some major announcement related to digital currency or some budget allocation that would give it a boost, especially considering the talks about it in the past year. but there was no mention of digital currency, and most of the announcements related to fintech were related to document access and ease of documentation managing, but no clear mention or no stance was given to digital currency.
Very important. I'll just give me one more question and then I'll get an answer there.
Actually, our panelists were saying that Corona and plus the Russia-Ukraine war has dampened the economy. But we see the picture before that, it was also not nice. Demonetization literally caused a big blunder to the economy. And even today, our population has the largest share of malnutrition and poverty. And with this, if we see the economic survey projections that the later decade growth will be between 6.5 to 7%. Yes. But this is not enough to increase this share of employment and to give growth to the youth.
Important. Mr. Jindal, as I said, while the industry experts will always be 9 out of 10, but these are some young students, those who also have their concerns. Fintech industry, they were expecting much more to come out of it. Not many announcements there. A lot of talk about startups, but then we've also seen in the last 6 months or so, not just globally, but in India as well, very big startups. There have been massive layoffs as well. Sustainability of the startups is also something that a lot of young people are worried about.
Yeah. Now I'll answer it one by one. As far as cryptocurrency is concerned, yes, I'm there with these kids. Cryptocurrency, the taxation should have been lesser because many of the youngsters have invested in cryptocurrency and many of the youngsters have invested their first salary. So it's important. Plus, the crypto market also needs to be regulated because we need to protect the investors also. As of now, it's not regulated. Just like we have SEBI in stock market, IRDA in insurance, RERA in real estate, I want crypto market also to be regulated so that the investors should be protected. Now somebody asked, a young student asked about digital rupee. Digital rupee, let me inform beta, already pilot project has been launched.
Right.
Now on digital rupee, you need not do allocation of money. Digital rupee is a procedural issue. So I'm quite sure the digital rupee story has started. It would continue functioning because I don't think you need allocation of money on that. Now, fintech and massive layoffs. Yes, Russia-Ukraine war is the reason. That's why we are seeing globally many of the companies coming out with layoffs, and Russia-Ukraine war has impacted the global economy very, very negatively.
Okay.
When US has been impacted, China has been impacted. I've already given you figures of UK and Germany. So I think, and Russia-Ukraine war was continuing in December. We had again China reeling under Corona.
Okay.
So global problems one after one have been impacting fintech.
But also, many experts are also saying that this is some sort of standardization or actual realization which is now setting in as far as global tech companies are concerned. During the COVID pandemic, a lot of over-hiring was done. Now they're trying to rationalize as far as their hirings are concerned, and that is why we are seeing a lot of job losses. But like one of your students said, year on year, and this is what the government's critics also say, if you compare the last 9 years and let's say 9 years before that, the average growth in terms of GDP as well doesn't seem to be hitting the mark where people were expecting post-2014.
Undoubtedly, but to expect the GDP growth rates to be robust in an environment where many countries have seen a negative dip in the growth rates, I think it is not a logical question. We were anticipating cuts in our growth rates, despite the expansionary monetary and fiscal policy stance which the government and the central bank took during the COVID time. And I think the very fact that we maintained a growth rate of 6 to 7 is commendable. And even the World Bank and the United Nations have acknowledged publicly in their writings that the kind of poverty, anti-poverty strategies which were adopted during COVID were so well targeted, and there was practically no leakage, and we were probably one of the few countries which emerged out after the COVID without increasing the poverty levels. Now the question is on unemployment. You increase expenditure on Manrega, people get employed. Is this the kind of employment that you're looking for? So we do not want employment which is at low levels.
Okay.
The kind of employment we want is a skilled employment generation, more so in the formal sector of the economy.
Right.
Until that time, please remember, union budgets are always a yearly plan. We don't expect it to do miracles in terms of a 20-year plan.
Sure.
We are on the right path. This is the most important. And also importantly, we have to maintain our fiscal prudence.
Absolutely.
And we have maintained the trend of reducing fiscal deficits.
Okay. So let me take a few more questions. It'll be interesting, what everybody, all hands are raised. Let me first try and get some questions from the back as well. There are a lot of students there. What's your name?
My name is Saket Goenka.
Tell me, Saket, what were the highlights for you at the budget? And for a young person, did you find, because one of the 7 things that the finance minister spoke about was the focus on youth. Was it enough in this budget for the youth?
First of all, I think the budget are quite comprehensive, but I have 2 concerns. The first is related to education, because as you know, India is one of the most youngest country in the whole world. So our expenditure on education is less than 4%. And in developed countries and countries which are of high GDP as compared to India are still spending more than 6% of their GDP in education.
Okay.
So on one side you want to promote youth, on one side you are not increasing the expenditure on education at that level.
Exactly, which will be the basic building block as far as our informed economy is concerned. Education is one concern. What's your name?
My name is Nishya Agarwal, and I think it was a very, very comprehensive budget overall. But one of my concerns again is in the sector of education. I think there has to be proper implementation of the new education policy. In the new education policy, new curriculum has been introduced for all the higher education institutes, but sufficient infrastructure has to be provided for the same.
Sufficient infrastructure for education to be provided for education, ma'am. What is your name? That's all right. Keep sitting and tell me.
Hi, my name is Bhavika Dhamija, and well, my question is that since our finance minister claimed that India has grown out to be the 5th largest economy in the world, however, still very less allocation has been provided to basic amenities such as healthcare, and considering the pandemic situation, also the education sector has been provided quite less allocation. So that's a matter of concern.
So one
for
more
me.
on education. Last one, and then I go and get an answer.
Yeah, so in the budget there was a national digital library, and also there was a mention about the centers, training centers. So they are putting training centers, but what about the non-availability of the teachers?
So largely these 4 questions, and let me take it to somebody who is in the education sector. Largely these students have been speaking about, they said the allocation for education sector as we already have surpassed China in terms of the numbers that we the Indians, and we are a young population. So like you were talking about skill jobs, where will those skill jobs come from, or that training come from if people are not educated? So they are not very happy about the kind of allocation that has been done on education. And number 2, like that young girl's lady said that what about having more teachers? What about having better infrastructure when it comes to education? And of course, even in the health sector, the budget allocation hasn't increased despite last 2 years we have seen complete focus of every country only on one thing, that was health and pandemic.
I agree with my students. Education is a very important sector. And in economics, we call this as a classic case of a public merit good. Education and health is something largely, traditionally, is to be fulfilled by the state. But over time, we have seen that the government, if it is unable to increase its expenditure on education, it is promoting private participation both in the education as well as the health sector. The advantage is that if the government does not have its own resources, at least it is trying to bring in the private sector. But there are concerns about commercialization of education if there's a private sector. But my point at this would be, let there be competition at least. Now understand the dilemma of the government. We are not a resource-rich country. We are an emerging economy. We are not a developed economy. And education and health always give benefits over a very long period of time. You can't expect investments today to reap benefits substantially.
Okay.
So from the government perspective, better to invest where immediate impacts are going to be stronger and kind of delay where the impacts are going to be felt positively.
Right.
This is a political economic view of how to handle. But I would still say the allocations which are going to social sector, education is the most important sector within the social sector.
Absolutely, yes. Okay, last 2 questions. Tell me one thing. Because all of you are, commerce students studying, and are your parents already calling you up, asking you explain the new tax regime? Is that happening for a lot of you? Everybody is expecting you to explain the new tax regime. Any questions about that, guys?
Yeah. So there has been a lot of emphasis in this budget on the new tax regime. But what about the savings and investment that people used to do in old tax regime? That would decrease, and they would have no incentive in saving and investing in NPS or insurance.
Okay. You have a question?
I have a question, but not related to the tax regime. So, in the last budget, we had a lot of mention about smart cities and stuff, but this budget had no mention of it. So, where does that go now?
Yeah, so fulfilling what the promises, Mr. Jindal, which are already made by the government, that is something, it's very smart to just keep on announcing new schemes. This time we heard 50 new, tourism hubs. We'll identify 50 new cities. But what about the schemes that were already launched, like the smart city scheme, which is certainly lagging behind?
Well, firstly, I'll answer the growth question which somebody asked. Let me tell our children, 2027 will be the third biggest economy according to global agencies, and by 2035 when we'll be a 10 trillion US dollar economy. Now, as far as fulfilling promises, yes, it's very important, and it's good that we have got young and bright kids who are raising questions on that. The government must fulfill the promises it has made, and they should try to do that with full conviction. It's very important, because rather what I'll suggest is that there should be a report card after 6 months and after 1 year of the budget presentation, promises versus projections versus
Absolutely.
performance. What you projected, what you promised, and what have you delivered. That's very important. That would infuse much more confidence in the public.
And much
in
more
the
accountability
citizen.
as far as the government is also
Accountability
concerned.
and if you have not been able to achieve something, you should justify and give the reason. Of course, last year, I have to tell you, beta, Russia-Ukraine war was something which started after the budget announcement. So many of the government's planning didn't work that way, because Russia-Ukraine war, as Madam has rightly said,
But such smart city
devastated-
project has been an old project of the government. I mean, we have been hearing it for the last 5-6 years. But ma'am, one quick answer on the tax regime. It's a very important point that that gentleman made. The fact is that the new tax regime has been there for the last couple of years. The government, it seems, has not found many takers of the new tax regime. And in this budget, there has been a considerable push towards the new tax regime. Is this, in a way, discouraging people to save, like the old tax regime, and that he was saying that you're discouraging savings, you're giving a flat, reduction of sorts as far as the new tax regime is concerned? And is it more attractive now than it was, compared to the old tax regime?
I think it's very important to understand that most of the middle class was anticipating relaxations on the tax structure. The last time it happened was probably 16-17 or 17-18. So the very fact that the government has come up by increasing the slabs and giving relaxation was anticipated, and there is no harm to take this forward.
Yes.
If it is reducing savings, there are other ways. Because there could be a trade-off, there could be a reallocation, but I'm very sure there are other methods to fill up that gap if at all this do arise. And it's important for the students to understand that the moment you have your fiscal deficits which are high, the equation of your GDP clearly shows you borrow for the fiscal deficits either from your saving surplus or from rest of the world.
Okay.
So the very fact that you have curtailed your fiscal deficits to narrower numbers means we are comfortable even if our savings are not as robust as they could be.
Right.
So we remain comfortable from that front. Plus our revenue receipts are increasing so substantially that government is in a comfortable space.
Okay. I've come to the end, as far as this presentation is concerned. Quick questions. But in the end, you heard the experts giving their overview and their marks as far as this budget is concerned. I'm interested in what you guys think. So let's do a voice vote, as it usually happens in the parliament. So how many of you think that this budget, has met the expectations? If you are satisfied with the budget, you'll say yes. If you are not, you'll say no. So let's see. So how many of you are satisfied with the budget?
Yes.
Yes. How many of you are not satisfied with this budget? Well, at least in this house, the noes have it, the noes have it. But let's also understand, ladies and gentlemen, despite the current global problems, the challenges globally that we are seeing, India still remains a bright spot. And also remember, this is an important election year.
And one small thing.
Yes.
कभी किसी को मुकम्मल जहां नहीं मिलता.
बिल्कुल सही
कभी
बात है.
ज़मीन तो कभी आसमान नहीं मिलता. Everything which you aspire, you can't get. Government has got its limitations. There's a limited amount of allocation which has to be done.
So like in
it
the
is
end-
how
Sir, allow me to say one
intelligently
thing.
you
There
allocate
is-
that limited resources and our talented finance minister Nirmala Sitharaman ji.
Okay.
She has allocated the limited resources in a very, very nice manner. So it's a
I'm
big yes from
completely
my
out of
side.
time. Ma'am, please
you
go ahead.
gave two options,
Yeah.
satisfactory and not
Not
satisfactory. Excellent to diya hi nahi. Maybe the ones who were quiet wanted to say in that
Well,
category.
let me tell you, and to the credit of your students, nobody was quiet. Everybody had an
Okay.
opinion. So that's a good thing about all your students. All right, that's all the time that we have in this edition. And like Sir said, I will just end it. Thoda hai, thode ki zarurat hai. It is after every budget. Thank you so much for tuning in on this special presentation on NDTV. Thank you, guys. Can I have a big round of applause for all of you? Thank you. You've been a
Thank you
lovely
so
audience.
much. Thank you so much. You really anchored it so
Thank you so
well.
much,
Thank you
ma'am.
so much.